All right, so hi Selena, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good. So do you want to tell us a little bit about the background of your piece, Kadupul?
Yeah, so it's the Kadupul, which is a flower. The title came well after I composed the piece. The title is almost always the last thing on my mind. So I wrote the piece during the pandemic, originally for string quartet, and then I realized after I did that, I kind of could play around with it and condense around a little bit more. And the basic kind of thing, I was listening to a lot of the boy bands of the early 2000s when I wrote it, a lot of Backstreet Boys and NSYNC, which of course they clash, but they're both really great. And I was just, of course, almost every pop song follows the same progressions. But every Backstreet Boys song, literally, it's just so much of the same. But there's something so comforting because you always know exactly when the resolution happens, you know where it's going. So I was taking those chords that for Shape of My Heart was kind of the basis for Catapult. And then I just took those chords and then started building from it. And then also at the time, I was listening to a lot of Rimsky-Korsakov because at the time I was helping someone with their thesis on Korsakov's orchestration and stuff, and I was explaining he used some of my work in his thesis to show that stuff. And so I was thinking, okay, Scheherazade, the violin is so flexible. The strings just really move lightly. I was like, all right, cool, let's try to combine the two now. So that's basically kind of how it went. And then as I started writing, I realized I would try to tell the story of a flower. Why not? We tell human stories so often. So the catapult's a very unique flower. As soon as you pluck it, it immediately starts dying. So it's kind of the story that is being told in the piece is sort of from its planting. A seed is planted, and then all the journey, the vines coming up, the leaves moving, all that stuff, and then eventually the flower is plucked, which is demonstrated by the rest in the music. So that's been taken out of the earth, and then the rest of the piece it sort of wilts. And in my story, the flower is a fighter, so it starts trying to fight back. So then, when there's kind of like a recapitulation of sorts into the piece, it's sort of with this resolve that it's fighting against wilting, but then ultimately the catapult dies in strength and beauty, which is actually some of the text that was written in the piece as well. But of course, that doesn't come through as you listen.
Did you write the text that goes along with the piece?
I did, yeah. I just kind of, I was kind of just imagining in my brain, kind of what if I were voicing it. My mind went to the people on like National Geographic, how they would do it. The catapult was planted in the ground. It's kind of how I was planning through. So I did some research, on the plant first, and it's just a really cool type of plant. It's fairly rare because every time you pluck it, it dies, so you can only plant so much. But yeah, so I wrote the text. I wrote kind of the concept for it.
So you said the piece was originally written for strings. Do you want to talk a little about how it came to this instrumentation and how we met and everything?
Yeah, so it was, usually when I write, things end up just being kind of for strings as just a placeholder. It's always just easiest that everything's in the same pitch, and it's just, I don't know, my brain just likes that. The timbre is a little easier on the MIDI playback and stuff. So it was written for that. And then, when I was kind of last year kind of hunting around to see, what groups can I write for, what things can I do, and I started talking with Drew about, oh, you have this reed group, this reed trio, and I thought about it, I'm like, wait, this piece could totally work for that instrumentation. All I'd have to do is find some points to combine the two violin parts into one voice, and then kind of distribute, and then play around with the different timbres of the woodwinds. So a couple little other changes, things like slap tongue instead of pizzicato, obviously having to take breathing into account, which is, I mean, bowing, of course, there's a thing, but breathing, you like obviously you don't want to pass out. So I
Yeah.
didn't want to be that person. So, I had some changes to make, but yeah, I mean, the instrumentation honestly kind of came from meeting you, Drew, and kind of hearing what group it was before. So it kind of built after that.
And then something I find very interesting, like we've had composers write for a variety of different, especially like writing for different saxophone, soprano, alto, tenor, but you're the only composer to write for soprano. Any specific reason you picked soprano? And then I think you're also the only piece to switch between oboe and English horn in the middle of it. So any particular reason for doing that?
You know, kind of. So first of all, I really love the soprano sax. I tend to be more of a soprano-minded individual. Like I'm a soprano singer, play the clarinet. You know, it tends my mind just kind of goes there. So the soprano sax just seemed to kind of fit. I was between either trying to have two higher instruments and then a low saxophone and having to combine them that way, which is doable, but that's just one approach. And then I thought, okay, let's just see what happens if I take kind of three instruments in their most kind of soprano area. And then the oboe English horn switch, I think part of the reason I also just love the English horn. I think it's just it's honestly pretty underrated. I think it's really pretty. But I think I didn't want one just on, for the whole piece. So I'm a big fan of switching things, even if like small thing, as a clarinet player, switching even just B flat to A, like the Stravinsky three pieces, I never really understood it, but there is something that just changes. Also, I think visually it's kind of cool to see more stuff happening, like, oh, another instrument, okay, like, technically we've seen like more than just the three that are, written on it. So
Yes, and I mean, personally, I love the combination of having the three high instruments. I think it works so well, and it's something just so different than everything else that's been written. How close some of the chords and some of the dyads just sound. I really do think it sounds fantastic written that way.
Thank you.
Yeah, when we were playing this, we all kind of like agreed that we just loved the combination of saxophone, B-flat clarinet, and English horn. They just meld so well together.
I'm really glad to hear it. I think I'm so used to hearing the MIDI stuff at this point that I'm like, well, I wonder if people actually like the real ones. But I think just and it helps that of course the three of you know how to play together. That obviously is a huge part of it. You have that kind of community of yourselves. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Like getting comfortable with performing with other people and getting comfortable with somebody's writing, like it just once it all melds together very nicely, I think it just helps enhance the performance.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I have to ask, but you said one of your inspirations for writing this piece was Backstreet Boys and NSYNC. So with our instruments, are there any specific singers that you would pair with us?
Oh, that's not where I thought we were gonna go.
Same. I was not expecting that either.
I was wondering where this would go. I honestly, I really don't know. I feel like you all could be the lead singers, like no question. But I also really could see you all like doing the backup dancing too. Like maybe you just need to be doing both. Yeah, I haven't thought about it enough. It's honestly maybe embarrassing to think about how much I've listened to the groups, but can't remember like which singer and it does which. But the music is just good. It's groovy, and it's a pretty cool like hallmark. I listened to that stuff on my Walkman growing up, so it's a nostalgia piece there.
All right. Is there anything else that you want the listeners and watchers to know about before hearing your piece?
Just thank you for listening in. Thank you as always for supporting new local, or new contemporary composers and performers. It's really going to be a cool premiere, so I'm very excited. And yeah, thank you so much for having me on today to talk about it.
Yes, thank you, and thank you so much for writing the piece. It's been great working with you. And I know you and I actually have another piece that you wrote for me recently for tenor saxophone piano. So we'll be chatting more and working on some more pieces together. So, yes, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Selena. Thank you, Drew. And thank you for all the watchers and listeners. I hope you guys enjoy Selena's piece, Kadupul, about a flower, but inspired by boy bands.